Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the WHOLEISTIC Method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everybody, it's Debbie Potts, and you are going to have a new episode with the one and only Dr. Phil Maffetone, and I'm bringing him on the show again today to talk about sleep. How important is sleep for our performance? It's pretty big. It is also a reason sleep is one of the 8 elements of the WHOLEISTIC Method that we talk about on the podcast. Sleep is when your body repairs itself, rebuilds, and re-energizes. And it's also when we have our internal housekeeping, our detoxification system going on. So it's really important to get our sleep. And I think a lot of people I know that I coach and train and clients of all ages are not getting enough sleep these days. And we tend to stay up too late and play on our iPhones or iPads or looking on social media way too long and multitasking and having that monkey mind before bed. So I wanted to talk to Dr. Maffetone today to talk about sleep and performance and how we recover while we sleep and a little bit of everything. So let's bring on Dr. Maffetone.
Thanks, Debbie. I appreciate it. It's great to be back again.
I'm so excited to have Dr. Maffetone on the show today. We welcome you. I know you're busy traveling all the time and doing so many different projects and books and your website blogs and so much going on. So thanks for coming on to discuss the importance of sleep and the athlete and the athlete's performance. So let's kind of dive in today and talk about why we need to sleep. So I find that a lot of athletes, especially triathletes who we need to do swimming and biking and running every week. And that often is 3 to 4 times a week of each. So maybe you're doing 12 or more workouts a week, plus strength training, maybe some yoga. You're doing that on top of working full time or having a full-time job as a parent or both. And a lot of people, I think, are burning the candles at both ends, which is what I wrote about in my book, Life is Not a Race, because we're packing so much in each day that it's hard to really train for a triathlon at a distance as Ironman and maintain everything. And so what's the first thing to go is people's sleep. So what do you think of the importance of sleep for performance for athletes?
Well, it's a very common problem for athletes, probably no different than the general population. It's poor sleep is a public health problem. It's very common and it's very significant, and it impacts not just on our performance, for example, as athletes, but it affects our health in many ways, and it also affects society. I mean, think about poor sleep being linked to motor vehicle crashes, industrial accidents, unintentional accidents, medical mistakes, bus crashes, train crashes, airplane crash. I mean, the list goes on and on. So this problem of poor sleep, A, is very, very common, and B, whether we're a competitive athlete or not, has a very significant impact on our lives.
So I know a lot of athletes who, and my clients as well, that they're doing a lot of computer work or reading or watching TV or trying to get their second wind at nighttime when we should be slowing down, calming down, dimming the lights, get relaxed, doing some restorative exercises even to help us go to sleep. But instead, most people are staying up till 11 at night. But what I've heard is that you should get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and ideally we're sleeping 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So 10 to 2 a.m. we're getting that rebuilding cellular level activity in our detoxification. Then I've heard once, or you get your psychological repair between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. And somewhere in there, during those 7 to 9 hours, getting a lot of housekeeping at a detoxification level, but also that rest and repair. And I think, people go to bed so late and get up early to get their workouts. And before they go to work, they're just kind of skipping out on that important part of our circadian rhythm.
Well, that is the question that I've heard my whole career, from athletes in particular. I have to, because I would always ask about sleep. When do you actually fall asleep? When do you wake up? Do you use an alarm clock or not? What about, on the weekends? Does your sleep cycle shift? Blah, blah, blah. And many athletes and many other people as well would really have the same issues, the same question, which is, am I better off waking up at 4:30 a.m. to get my workout in, or sleep until 6 o'clock or whatever, and not get my workout in because my day's really busy, blah, 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 blah. You never want to sacrifice your sleep. If you skipped your workouts, if you cut your training by 30 or 40% and slept better, as an athlete, you'd perform better. As a human being, you'd function better. And really, that's the bottom line.
So I've obviously experienced a lot of issues with cortisol, and I expressed it all in my Life is Not a Race book to help other people avoid going through what I've gone through with my cortisol rhythm being messed up. And part of that, your melatonin is supposed to come up at night and your cortisol is supposed to be down. Cortisol is supposed to go up in the morning. Your melatonin is supposed to go down. But often people get to sleep, but then they wake up a lot during the night, or they wake up at 2 a.m. They feel like it's, time to get up, and they're just wide awake. And I think that's a big issue and a concern. I know when I'm coaching my clients with nutritional therapy is, how are your sleep cycles? How's your energy level throughout the day? And how do you sleep at night? And a lot of that is adrenal issues, that stress hormone. But, as we've talked about, it's HPA axis, the relationship with the hypothalamus, telling the pituitary gland, telling the adrenals. We've got a stressor alert, and that's accumulation of stressors. And I think our chronic busyness is just building up and making us more as sleep dysregulated with our sleep, because our hormones get dysregulated.
Well, there are different stages. There are different periods of time when certain things are working, and then other things kick in later, like you say. I think those are good general things to look at, and they're fun to read about. But we need the whole package. I actually did have somebody say to me one time, "Well, my most important sleep time is from 2 to 5, and so I'm up till 12 or 1 a.m. because I don't need that part of the sleep cycle." Come on, let's wake up, so to speak. We need the whole package, and we need it to be natural. We have this natural circadian rhythm, and if we disturb it, we have problems. And we all know what happens when we disturb our natural circadian rhythm, because most of us have flown east to west or west to east far enough to be in a very different time zone. And we know what jet lag is. We know what it feels like. Well, a lot of people are stuck in jet lag all the time because their circadian rhythm is just screwed up. And it's usually they're doing from a health standpoint, why can't I sleep? That's another common question from people. There's a lot of individual issues about that. Well, what is it about you as a person that's causing you to not sleep right? In general, people who are healthier sleep really well. So when there's a sleep problem, whether it's you get into bed hoping to sleep and it takes you an hour or two or three, or you get into bed and you're sleeping in 2 minutes because you're so tired, you're actually exhausted. But then you wake up 4 hours later in the middle of the night and you're full of energy, regardless of the patterns. And those patterns are very important. And when I had, when I did an assessment on patients, I would, if they weren't sleeping really well, I would delve into those kinds of things. So there's a lot of components. Happens. What do you feel when you wake up? What time do you wake up? What time do you go to sleep? Do you wake up with an alarm clock? Do you need an alarm clock? Lots and lots of questions that enable you to individualize the therapy. You know, how are we going to fix this patient's sleep problem? Well, they might need to do more of this and less of that. But in general, people who are healthy sleep better. And so when you're not sleeping well, you have to understand that most likely there's a health problem that is hidden away, or maybe not hidden away. I think in many cases, sleep problems are associated with reductions in fat burning. And we certainly see that in people with sleep apnea. They tend to be people who have high amounts of body fat. And and these are the people who use CPAP machines that force, the air in and out of the lungs and so forth. And when they start to burn more fat, when they start losing body fat, they start sleeping better and they can get off the CPAP. And sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes it's a trigger where that actually stimulate, because now they're sleeping, even though it's artificial, they're getting a fat burning benefit. So you get into these vicious cycles, and it sometimes is hard to figure it out. You might need help from a person like us.
So as a nutritional therapy practitioner that I just finished school in June, which is why the podcast has been on hold for a couple months, I find it's really interesting doing our functional evaluation with clients with their blood sugar regulation or adrenal functions. So we do a couple tasks that I find really fascinating. Is the eye pupillary exam. We shine a light at their pupils for 20 seconds and see how your pupils respond to light. Also, we do a blood pressure test. So you go from lying down, taking their blood pressure, to pumping it right back up, and have them stand up and see how their blood pressure changes when they stand up. And also testing their reflex points for their adrenal glands, which is above their kidneys. So it's a little bit above their navel. So go 2 inches up and 1 over is the adrenal sites. But how do you find those are helping evaluate the adrenal function or HPA axis regulation? Because it's all connected together. But what are your thoughts on testing out our adrenals?
Yeah, those are time-tested evaluations. I used those when I first went into practice in the 70s. And there's a lot of others. There's a lot of questions that you can ask, and depending on the answers. But I just, whenever this quote unquote adrenal problem discussion comes up, I have to stop and say there is no such thing as an adrenal problem. There are many types of adrenal problems. Your adrenals can be overactive, they can be underactive, they can be making too much cortisol, too little cortisol, they can be making too much part of the day and too little another part of the day. All the other hormones that either the adrenals make or influence significantly, testosterone, the estrogens, progesterone, insulin. There's all of this stuff. And when we look at a patient and say, what is wrong with this patient? We might come up with an answer, but then we should immediately say, well, what causes that? So when we when we look at a person who has what we think is an adrenal problem, and even if we figured out, okay, the adrenals are doing this and that, and they're not doing these things, we should say, well, where does that problem come from? Of course, lifestyle is a big factor, but the adrenal is responding to the brain. There is what's called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So what that means is part of the brain called the hypothalamus, which governs a lot of, that's like one of the bosses. That part of the brain tells the pituitary, here's how we're going to compensate for this insane life this person is leading. So I want you to tell the adrenals to increase cortisol. And so the adrenals do that. The problem is when it becomes chronic, the adrenals get literally exhausted and they're unable to make more cortisol. The adrenals then, go through the state of hypertrophy. They literally get bigger so that they can possibly make more cortisol. And it goes on and on. And again, this whole thing, this hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is only one mechanism that the brain uses. It has one for the thyroid, the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis. It has one for the ovaries, hypothalamic pituitary ovary axis, and so forth. But the adrenals play such a large part in all of those things because, like everything else, it feeds back to the brain, and the brain is sort of juggling all the stresses that people have in their lives in trying to keep up and adapt. The word adaptation is quite appropriate. And that's where sleep comes in. It comes in because sleep enables us to recover. And by recovering better, we're able to adapt better. So that's when we talk about sleep, it's the other half of our life. It's the other half of, all this training that people do to get more fit and lose weight and so forth. That's only half of it, because if we don't sleep, we don't recover, and then that training becomes overtraining.
So part of what I've learned through nutritional therapy program, being a nutritional therapy practitioner, is working with people, as I said, energy levels throughout the day, but looking at what they're eating, the ratio of carbs to protein to fat, and trying to focus on the main goal is balancing the blood sugar so we don't have those insulin surges. And many people are sugar burners, not fat burners. And as we've talked about over the years in the podcast here, originally Fit, Fat, Fast, and now the Whole Athlete podcast about how to get the body to burn fat. And so what do you know about what we're eating before bed, how that affects our sleep? Eating sugar is going to spike our blood sugar level up, and it could be part of the reason why we wake up in the middle of the night because we're having a low blood sugar, we're hypoglycemic. And then there's other people that get to be insulin resistant from accumulation of excess cortisol will gradually wear out the pancreas because it keeps responding to that excess glucose because it's crazy how this all works. But every time you have a stress response, you're increasing your glucose levels so you can respond to that emergency threat, that run from a lion. And I find it really, looking at the whole picture, looking at our sleep, for example, talking today about just sleep and performance, but what you eat before bed really makes an impact. And perhaps we need to practice more intermittent fasting and not eat, as I tell some clients, try not eating after 7 o'clock at night or 7:30 p.m. Don't eat at 9 o'clock and then go to bed. Sometimes I think it's just easier not to eat. And plus I hate going to bed with a full stomach myself. So what's your thoughts on what we're eating and fasting?
It's really simple. I just wrote an article on fasting because this issue of intermittent fasting has come and gone ever since I was a student. I mean, it comes and goes. And the problem is that, these things are never defined. So people are talking about all these things, but don't have a definition. The most important thing from a fasting standpoint is to have a period of time where you're not eating, and that's at night. That's that part of the cycle. Like you say, it's all tied together, and we shouldn't be going to sleep after a meal. So, early in the evening is when our last meal should be. And if we have to snack all evening because we're hungry, then we have a problem that has to be fixed. We should be finishing our dinner early in the evening. That's the end of eating for the day. And we have this long fast until the next morning when we break our fast, breakfast, and we start eating again. And that aids sleep immensely. So it's also drinking. People consume alcohol in the evening, which disrupts sleep. I'm amazed at how many people still drink coffee late in the day, and it disrupts their sleep. I'm also amazed at how many people don't realize that decaf coffee has some caffeine, and people that are sensitive, people that have a bit of overactivity in their sympathetic nervous system, respond to decaf coffee, even though there's a tiny bit of caffeine in it. They respond sufficiently to have it disturb their sleep. So those are important things.
So what about coffee? How much coffee should we have a day, and how long does that caffeine affect us? If we have, sometimes I say to clients not to have coffee in my own room. Rule for myself is not after 12 o'clock or even 11:30 a.m. Latest 2 p.m. can really keep in your system till evening. So there's something, how long caffeine, I forget what it is, how long it stays in your system every hour to the half-life to say it's in your system till 9 o'clock. So how does that work, and how does that affect our sleep and our performance? Having too much caffeine, as I know up here in Seattle, people are drinking coffee at all times of the day, even after dinner.
It's not so much the half-life of caffeine, which can vary. I don't like to use the word detox, but the caffeine is broken down in the liver in a very specific way using very specific nutrients, and it varies significantly sometimes from person to person. There's actually a caffeine clearance test you can have done. It's a urine test. It's a good test. I've used it mostly to show the patient what's going on. But the problem is there are a lot of people who, if they drink too much coffee in the morning, will have trouble sleeping. And it's not because the caffeine is still around when they go to bed. It's because they've stimulated the sympathetic nervous system too much, and that recovery period has taken too long. And so they're affected. Their sleep cycle is affected by that.
So what do you know about eating foods that we're allergic to or have a sensitivity to? As I've learned that they will raise your heart rate up using something like the Cocoa Pulse test, that you can take your pulse for 1 full minute, put something in your mouth, and retest your heart rate for 1 full minute on your wrist. Is the easy way to do it, and see how that food responds. And if it spikes your heart rate up, you're probably creating an allergic reaction to it. So, and if a lot of people are eating foods that we become intolerant to and causing digestive problems or inflammation in our body, but it could also affect our sleep during the night if we're having something as food that could be another stress, a source of stress for our body to deal with. So how would that affect the body?
I mean, it's almost silly to say that, if we eat things we're allergic to, it's going to disrupt our sleep. Well, of course it is. And we know the mechanisms in most cases. And it goes back to this issue of prioritizing things. If we get healthy, all these things disappear and we sleep better. Not only do we sleep better, but everything else works better. So let's not put sleeping in a compartment and say, here's the sleep problem, and here are the ways of treating sleep problems. We need to look at the big picture, because everybody's different, and you may not have your sleep problem fit neatly into a little box that we can generically say, do this, that, and that, and your sleep problems will get better. That's sort of the medical model, I've called it, which is, alternative medicine model has gone the way of the medical model. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but unfortunately it's true. where we have, if you have a sleep problem, take magnesium. If you have an, vision problem, take vitamin A. If you have, this problem, eat more of that. Man, I wish it was that easy.
I've tried acupuncture myself to help work on my parasympathetic nervous system, help get me more in balance or resiliency to go sympathetic back to parasympathetic. Because I seem to be one of those sympathetic dominance people that many of us are getting to be over the years with our lifestyle habits. But I know from nutritional therapy, different tricks we can do to help our sleep, taking some nutrients, some herbal supplements, and even for me, magnesium's been upping that because it's low in magnesium. So what are you thinking that you would have your clients take or do to help their sleep if they have disrupted sleep cycle?
Yeah, it's a cookbook society. We have a remedy. It's a pill for every ill. We've got a remedy for every symptom, every sign, and it's been done in acupuncture. You look at the difference between Chinese medicine acupuncture, the way it's traditionally taught, and the way the way acupuncture is taught here. Acupuncture is taught if you have low back pain, you needle these points. If you have a cold, you needle those points. That's what I was one of the first certified acupuncturists, and that's what they had from the beginning. It's done in homeopathy. It's done in spinal manipulation and chiropractic. It's done in all the therapies, not just medicine, but all the alternative therapies. They've all gone that way, and it's really sad. It reduces the work with patients to guesswork. It's not the process of assessing a patient and then applying a therapy based on the patient's needs.
So in our nutritional therapy program, what we do with clients is the first session we have them complete ahead of time of our meeting a nutritional assessment questionnaire, the NAC form we call it, and it has about 320 different questions that are symptom related to body functions, to organs. And a lot of it, really comes to learning more about the person and symptoms that they don't even realize they have until I find I had to take this questionnaire or do the questionnaire 3 times until I realized what I was feeling, and becoming more in touch with those symptoms are actually related to dysfunction in something in my body. But also we're looking at 3-day food log or longer with symptoms after they eat. How do you feel? And really interviewing the client, getting them to talk about their energy levels, as I said, during the day and how they sleep at night. And it's really up the alley of my holistic method that I've been working on last 45 years, putting together just from experience. But I think, really getting to know someone and finding out, okay, what are some red flags throughout the day? What's causing that disruption in their sleep? Why are they staying up so late? And then looking at what solutions, what can we do differently, that biohacking techniques and different tricks to help them slow down and relax and unwind before they go to bed at night.
Yeah. It's really sad. Surveying the patient, asking questions, and then the answers drive other questions. That's what I did. That's actually how my app works now. And those 300 questions over the years, I've kind of prioritized so that there's a lot less than that. But it's pretty extensive. This is the human body we're talking about, so it's not a simple toy that you buy for a 5-year-old kid that only does one thing. We think sometimes we understand about the body. We don't understand a whole lot. We understand enough to help people, which is really nice, and has never been an issue with me getting tired of doing that. I still love doing that. I do it in different ways now, but it's a very complex system, and we need to understand it really well before we start applying therapies. And even then, applying the therapies is somewhat of an experiment. Or they call it being in practice, because you're practicing on people. You think you know what they need, and sometimes you hit a bullseye right away. But sometimes, just when we need it most, sometimes we're fooled, and we really screw things up and have to start back at square one again.
So I have a practitioner working on me now doing muscle testing and figuring out, it's really weird, but you see it being done on yourself and you become a believer. But say you're testing your adrenals or your small intestine or your liver, and they put your arm or your legs and do this hold release exercise, and then you get the right supplements to put in the dish by your head, then retest, and it's palpate the points, and you'll be strong, be able to resist that movement. They'll do the muscle test on you if you have the right nutrients, so you can tell what your body's missing, what nutrients is asking for with this muscle testing. But it's really interesting to see how it can help, get healthy from the inside out if you get the right tools. But it's just a different test than, I did so many lab tests over the years with naturopaths and doctors that it didn't really get to the root cause of why I was having problems. And so I'm just trying to look at this different technique and adding acupuncture into it. It's really fascinating new experiment.
Yeah, you have to be careful about that. That is a experimental procedure. I've been doing it my whole career, but it's meant to be used in conjunction with all these questions we ask people. So it's not meant to be a standalone. We can't. Yeah, we can't. See a patient and say, "Well, I'm going to test your sartorius muscle because it's related to the adrenals, and it's weak, and that's why you have knee pain. You have an adrenal problem." Well, sorry, that's as close to malpractice as you can get, because that's not a complete assessment. You're making a lot of assumptions. So, we should use all these really great assessment tools, but we should use them all together so that we develop a consensus for what's going on.
I really find that working as, again, nutritional therapy practitioners, we work with people and get all this information from them and from their body, from the functional evaluation process, to learn what their body needs, that we're all bio individuals. So there's not one program fits all for everyone, that we need to figure out individually, working with a practitioner that is skilled in the area to help you figure out, okay, why am I not able to sleep, and look at the root cause. And that's what I really love about being an NTP, is being an investigator and figure out, why is this happening, instead of just, all right, you can't sleep, take this. But let's look at, why. So it's like everyone's on thyroid medication. I'm like, why is your thyroid showing up low in your lab results? And what labs are you getting done? And then they get thyroid medication. So I'm excited to learn how to help people more and really look at the whole picture, the whole athlete, and figure out what that person individually, those specific needs that they have that they're missing, to help them improve their performance, their ability to burn fat, their ability to recover, and just be healthy and optimize their health from the inside out. As it isn't just that same program for everybody, as you know.
Yeah, and we need to learn these things for ourselves. We need to help the patient learn them for themselves, so that everybody can sleep. And if someone can't sleep, it's a big red flag, and you can't ignore it. You certainly can't take a sleeping aid, because that's treating the symptoms. And speaking of drugs, a lot of people are on drugs that impair sleep. So, it's not just alcohol. It's a lot of other drugs that people are just unaware of. Even aspirin and NSAIDs. People that have pain problems and take aspirin, that can interfere with sleep. It has to do with the production of melatonin. So there's just so many things to consider, and again, people need to consider a lot of different things, and there's no, take magnesium if you have a sleep problem kind of thing, because you might get lucky because someone actually does need magnesium, and when you give it to them, they sleep better. But, we don't want to rely on luck.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I always love talking to you and picking your brain and getting your opinion on all these topics we discuss with the Holistic Method elements for the podcast, The Whole Athlete, trying to teach people how to burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance from the inside out for athletes of all levels. So where can people find you? I know your website has tons of articles. You've got lots of resources on there. So share where we can find you and follow you.
philmaffetone.com is the website. There's probably 200 articles. There's one. There's at least one on sleep. I think it's called Sleep Well and Prosper. The iPhone app is the beta version is released now. There's an app page on the website that people can read about it and go to the App Store. The Android is in beta testing, and we should be ready to release that in the next few weeks. And so, lots of educational information there.
We should also add in before we wrap up that you have an amazing place that would be good, a vacation home or retreat place in Arizona. So let's give that information to our listeners, because who knows, someone might be looking for that exact place.
In Arizona, 4,500 feet altitude, in a little town at the end of a dead-end road, passive solar house with a very large garden that grows a whole lot of food. Contact me through my website.
I know a lot of people in Seattle were buying a vacation home in Palm Desert or Arizona this year. So maybe we can find some people who want to go live in the winter or just go on some long weekend trips to Arizona, because I know that always sounds good to me in the winter months when it's darker and rainier. You just need a good 3-day weekend once a month to get through the winter.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful place in the winter, but it's also nice in the summer because it doesn't get, at 4,500 feet, you're not like Tucson where it's not unusual to have triple digits in the summer. That doesn't happen here much.
Well, we'll let you get going, Dr. Maffetone. So thank you again. And I'll put the show notes and the articles up with the links and everything people need. And if you guys have any questions, you can go to our Facebook page, The Whole Athlete, or the website, thewholeathletepodcast.com, and we'll get the show up and running every Tuesday. So please send in your requests and information you'd like to learn more about. And if you yourself or someone that you'd like to have come on the show, talk about more ways we can transform the whole person from the inside out to be the best athlete we can be by working on not just our exercise and nutrition, but also our sleep and our stress and our digestion and our movement during the day, hydration, and of course, happiness. So enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully you'll get outside and put a smile on your face.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at WHOLEATHLETEPodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.